So I'm a busy guy. This year's been a little bit crazy, a little bit intense. I think I've flown 38 times. In 2 weeks' time it'll be 40 times this year, which is more than anyone should need to fly. I've been to, I think, 11 countries this year, 10 or 11 countries, which is just crazy. It's been a great year, don't get me wrong, but it's left very little time for stuff like gun reviews, equipment reviews, which are a little bit low on my priority list than some of the international hunting trips and trade shows and adventures that not only make better videos in my opinion, but also interest you guys probably a little bit more. But when something like this comes along, you don't just ignore it. I mean, just look at this thing. It's enough to get anyone's attention. It got my attention, and I'm sure you guys are keen to see what I have to say about this setup right over here. Now, this setup actually might look very, very familiar to you, and there's a reason for that. Firstly, the gun that's in the chassis is an FX Streamline. It's a gun that I've done a review on before, and it's a gun that's been kind of all over social media over the past year or two. So very popular gun, and you will recognize the action and the barrel that sits in the chassis. But secondly, the chassis itself was actually at the FX stand earlier this year. It had an FX Dreamline in it, which is not the same as this gun, but the chassis itself will look very, very familiar. So it's a setup that you may have seen some before, may look slightly familiar. Let's get into that, let's talk about it, and then at the end I'll conclude why I think this setup is good enough to make a full video on, because usually I would just post a few pictures of this on Instagram or something and move on. But let's get into this and let's talk about it. Let's talk about the gun first, because you're not going to get a chassis for a gun that you don't like. I'm not going to talk about the gun much. I mentioned this, the FX Streamline. I'll put a review down in the video description, but this is actually probably my second favorite FX gun after the Impact, which you may call me crazy for saying that, because you know you've got other guns like the Crown, which is technically a better gun, but there's just something about the Streamline that I really, really like. It's got a nice feel when you cock it. It's extremely smooth, and the sound when you shoot, it's harmonically, it's really, really nice out the box. I'll actually take a shot here so you can hear it. So fantastic gun. But as I said, I'll put the review down below so you can actually check out the gun itself. But in short, I really like the gun. But if there was one weakness of the FX Streamline, it was probably the stock. There were a few kind of design features of the stock that I wasn't that keen on. The first one was just the feeling of the pistol grip. It was a little bit small for my hands. I've got pretty big hands. The pistol grip was a little bit small for my liking, and the cheek piece was a little bit low for my liking. Usually with a gun you can select low scope rings to match the cheek piece, but because of the magazine on the Streamline, you have to use pretty high rings. So you know, the lower cheek piece plus the need for high rings make it a little bit difficult to actually shoulder the gun properly and to put your cheek properly. I do hear that FX did raise the cheek piece a bit in newer models, which is fantastic, but on my stock, on my Streamline, it wasn't perfect for me. But onto the chassis itself. This is made by Aeron in the Czech Republic, and I actually stumbled upon their Instagram page a few weeks back, and I recognized the name and I recognized the stock, and I remembered that they had actually had some stuff at IWA, and I actually contacted them after looking at their page and asked if they'd be willing to send me a stock for me to review. I'm not sure whether to call this a stock or a chassis. It's probably more of a chassis, but for the sake of speaking a universal language, let's call it a stock. They actually make a number of very interesting looking stocks. For the Streamline, they've got this stock, which is their field target stock, and they've got a bench rest stock. The difference between the two is that the field target stock is way more adjustable, whereas the bench rest stock doesn't have the same adjustments at the back here. With bench rest shooting, you've got your front rest and you've got a backrest or a sandbag, but you don't ever put your cheek down or need to put your shoulder in when you're doing proper bench rest shooting. So that chassis is a bit simpler. It will probably be a bit cheaper, but I needed something that is very adjustable because I don't shoot off the bench that often. If I do shoot with the front rested on something, it'll often be on the ground lying prone, and when you're lying prone, okay, you don't have to put your cheek down, but it's important to keep the same cheek pressure and shoulder pressure when lying prone and shooting as when you're standing or kneeling. Reason for that is harmonics. If you zero your gun with no cheek pressure, no shoulder pressure, and then you move and try to take a standing shot, your point of impact will shift. So for me, it was important to have the adjustability and not get the bench rest stock. Aeron does make these stocks with quite a few options. You can get different laminate colors on the wood, which is fantastic. I like the brown. I think for hunting stuff, it looks nice to have the brown. They also do different Cerakote colors for the actual aluminium, so you can get different patterns, you can get different colors. That's also fantastic. The Cerakote colors are quite nice. I really like that. I should probably mention that the Field Target stock does come with a Hamster. No, not that Hamster, silly. This is a Hamster. It's a little piece that attaches to the bottom of the stock over here. Let's see if I can get that there, like that, over there. And basically what that does is it gives you a bit of space over here, so that you can, let's say, rest your knee, your elbow on your knee like this, and you get that extra height if you want to take a shot at a steeper incline angle, which you often have to do for field target. It's a great part to have on the gun. I just personally decided to take it off because I'm used to shooting with my hand in this shape. I learned when shooting competitively a few years ago, when I actually took part in 10 meter shooting, I learned how to do this, and how to, even when you're standing up, put your elbow into your hip and get that elevation you need to take a nice steady shot. So I decided to take the Hamster off, but especially if you're doing field target competitions, it's a fantastic thing to have. More features of the chassis. Obviously, I mentioned all the adjustability. That's probably the main feature of the chassis. The pistol grip, it looks like you can move it slightly forward, slightly back, which is fantastic. I may be mistaken there, but it looks like you move the pistol grip a little bit. Obviously at the back here, you've got your cheek piece height, but you can also move your cheek piece forward and backward, which is fantastic. I found I had to move my cheek piece a little bit back because I liked my scope a little bit back, and in order to get that eye relief perfect, I wanted to move the cheek piece back and increase the length of pull. Length of pull is how far you have your butt plate back. I decided to move mine back basically to match my other guns. The issue I had with the original Streamline is that it was quite different to my Impact and to my centerfire rifles that I do long range shooting with. So it felt a little bit different, and it was a slight adjustment I had to do to make myself feel comfortable when I was shooting. With this one, I'm able now to set the length of pull to exactly the same as my centerfire rifles and my Impact. My centerfire rifles also have adjustable stock, so I'm able to universally set everything so that I can switch between this gun and my other guns, and it doesn't feel like there's any adjustment mentally that needs to be made. I can just sit down, I'll feel comfortable, and I'd shoot like I normally would, which is fantastic. There are weights at the back here. This is just to help you kind of balance the gun. You can take these off, but generally a heavier gun is actually a little bit better for shooting. That's why in competitive shooting you often have a maximum weight, but you don't really have a minimum weight. They know that weight is a good thing for shooting, so I've kept them on, but you can easily take them off if you want to lug the gun around, or make it a little bit lighter. Might actually be nice to take these weights off and use this rod at the back as a bag rider for when you're shooting off a bench or shooting off a sandbag. Not like the gun's really going to slide back much when it recoils, but just to have something a little bit smoother there on your shooting bag, it's a good thing to have. Moving forward on the gun, I mentioned the pistol grip here. It's really comfortable, but even forward, the whole chassis is aluminium, and what's nice about that is they're able to actually tap in with threads and make it very universal in terms of what you can add to it. This gun comes with Picatinny rails on both sides, the stock as I ordered it. I think you can decide what you want with it when you buy it, but I've got Picatinny rails on both sides and a Picatinny rail at the bottom, which is fantastic if you want to add accessories. So for example, you can take a standard LED lens, a torch, put 30mm scope ring on it, and simply attach it straight on to the rail, tighten it down, and then if you want to go out and do some night vision shooting, or shooting at night with a spotlight, you've got that torch attached, which is great. You can also add something like that Mantis X that I did a video of earlier to kind of analyze your recoil impulse when you take a shot and see whether you're doing anything wrong when you're shooting. So that's also a great thing to have. I personally will probably take this rail on this side off for the simple reason that I've actually shifted my sling from the bottom to the side, and I'll tell you why I've done that. I've got this bipod on here. This is, I think it's called a Modular Evolution bipod. I actually got this from Utah Air Guns. I hadn't seen it before that. Put it on here. It's absolutely fantastic bipod. What I like about it is you can set the cant and lock it down, whereas with my Atlas bipod I couldn't do that. It moved around a bit. So I really like this bipod, link below. But when you've got a bipod on your gun and you put it over your shoulder, if you've got the sling attached behind the bipod and you put it over your shoulder, the bipod can dig into your shoulder, and if you're walking around a lot it can actually become quite uncomfortable. What I've done is I just took the sling stud out from the bottom here where it was tapped for the stud, and I screwed it in the side. That's a fantastic thing about a modular chassis. With a wooden stock you wouldn't be able to just take your stud out and drill in the side without making your stock look ugly. This one you can do that, and that allows me, see it attaches at the back here as well, that allows me to just throw it over my shoulder like this and walk around with it, and it's extremely comfortable. And that's one of the reasons I actually prefer the Streamline to, let's say, my impact in certain circumstances. That the impact, you can't really sling it over your shoulder, you've got to carry it at your side, and it can make your arm a little bit sore if you're walking around all day, whereas a rifle length gun is much better for walking around long distances with. And yeah, this is a nice setup for carrying around. Despite being fairly heavy with the chassis on, it's comfortable, which is great. So we've looked at all the features, but I suppose the big question is, why would Matt Dubber, who has no interest whatsoever in field target as a sport, be interested in getting a field target stock? The reason is that field target is based on hunting, and hunting is in my DNA. I absolutely love hunting. I do hunting all the time. It's a big part of what I do on this channel, and so kind of points to the fact that if a field target stock is made to make field target better and to help you improve at field target, which is based on hunting, then it should help you in hunting as well. And that's absolutely the case. Often hunters don't bother spending the money on something like a field target stock because they don't think it'll make a huge difference, and the truth is it probably won't. You'll get along just fine with its standard Streamline setup. But if you do want to just make your experience a little bit better, in which case, in my case I do want to do that, then something like a chassis will definitely help you out. It's made to, make your shooting experience a little bit better. I can say for a fact that when I raise the gun up here, it's more comfortable than my original Streamline stock, and it allows me to use stuff like, let's say, non-adjustable scope rings. Often, if you've got a scope that's pretty cheap and doesn't have the elevation adjustments built in, you can run out of elevation for your long range shooting. The scopes I use are good. They have the elevation range in them. This is an Optizan EVX 4-16 first focal plane scope. It's a good scope. It's got the adjustment built into it, so you don't need those adjustable scope rings at all. The scope does just fine. If I use adjustable scope rings, it'll usually be to raise or lower the scope to the height of my cheek piece. But if you've got an adjustable cheek piece, there's no need to do that. And I prefer to have an adjustable cheek piece than adjustable rings, because adjustable rings, it's just one more moving part that can come loose and mess up your hunting experience. I've never had adjustable rings do that, but it's something that can happen. So I prefer fixed rings and adjustable cheek piece where possible, and this stock does allow me to do that. And that pretty much brings this video to an end. It wasn't something I needed to go too in depth on. It's just a stock, but I really wanted to just show you this thing because it is really, really cool. I know Aeron is looking for distributors worldwide, so if you like the stock and you're keen to import it to your country, wherever you may live, check their website below, contact them. I'm sure they'd be pretty keen to get hold of you. But aside from that, yep, fantastic stock, and I do have some really cool stuff coming up on my channel in the future. Not necessarily relating to this. If I do film stuff with this, it'll be in a few months time, but I've got a hunting series coming up with the guys from Air Hunters in Cape Town. I went all the way to Cape Town. I filmed some pigeon hunting for a few days, got so much footage. So I've got 3 15-minute videos coming up over the next few weeks that you're going to see, which are going to be really fantastic, so keep a lookout for that. And I am going to continue my Oxwagon Diary series with Claudio Flores. Claudio is coming from Patagonia, all the way from Patagonia to visit me in December. We're going to be spending a whole week hunting, so there's going to be probably quite a few videos filmed there with him, and we're going to go out and have a fantastic time. So look out for that. And one more thing, I've noticed people commenting that they're not seeing my new videos in their notification feed when they subscribe to me, which is really strange. Apparently a lot of gun related channels are having the same problem. I don't know if it's a glitch or if it's intentional, but if you want to be notified of my new videos, please hit the notification bell. Below there's the subscribe button, which you can hit if you haven't done that already, but there's a notification bell. If you hit that, you'll know when I've got new videos up and you're not going to miss it in the feed. So that's just one more thing I wanted to add, but that's it guys. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time, and hopefully the next few videos are going to be something that you enjoy a lot.